All right. So here we are. All right, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us here. Thanks for taking the time. So I, as people don't know this, but we go back way back to quite a few years and to a company called Eurocom. And you used to be like a super, well, you still are in everyone's eyes. You're super megastar technical animator. So if you maybe can take us a little bit about how you started, because I know you started as an animator and then things kind of spiraled down into technical animator, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a long progression, really. I mean, I started in corporate video effects, really, way back in 1989. Uh, then I joined a VFX company in Birmingham, and that was one of the few at the time that had a thing called Symbolics, which was the mother of all big, huge night storage radiator custom machines for 3D. I think it was about 200 grand at the time. It was a big piece of kit. Spent 6 years there doing commercials. Ended up in London doing commercials for the likes of Nintendo, which is bizarre because we ended up, doing commercials for games. Yeah. Then I went over to Clockwork Games in Nottingham. So I came over that was my first game gig, and it was from going for a commercial. You know, you get a month to do a commercial at the most, and you spend all night watching renders go on the back of leather sofas and go to sleep, to having a whole year to do one cutscene, which was just. I had a whole year to do the cutscene for Vanishing Point, and it was awesome. It was just so good. Really, that's the best place ever. Clockwork Game. Uh, just because it was a good laugh. And they went bust. Joined Eurocom, and yeah, started out as an animator at Eurocom. So I started out as cutscene animator for Bond Nightfire. Then I, yeah, then I was cutscene lead, looking after Spyro. And then after that, I was lead animator for Athens, and that was the one really that started all of the code, because Bond we had rigs from EA, Spyro they were internal but they were done by another guy. Athens we had gymnastics, we had equestrian, so we had all of the stuff that is the worst you could possibly do. So female floor routines, and we had the US number two male gymnast in Texas doing tumbles and flips, and you look at the data and you go, God, that's not going to solve. So that's kind of where most of the tool set stems from. All of the mocap songs that we wrote, all of the way that we do stuff stems from Eurocom and stems from that. And at the end of that project, I kind of persuaded the directors that it was stupid that every project, and it still happens today, that every project starts with a TD, writes their own rig for that project, writes their own tools for that project, writes their own export for that project, and at the end of it, throw it away, they start a new project, someone else comes in and says, I'll write the same thing. So yeah, persuaded the directors at Eurocom it would be a really sensible idea to make an R&D department. So I spent, 8 years running the R&D department, 7 of them dedicated to writing the rigs, the export systems, the facial systems, all the animation code, anything to do with Maya and the handshake between Maya and Motion Builder and facial and body came through the R&D department. And that's why Eurocom could turn things around so fast, because the rig, it was a few buttons, and it's a consistent rig, which means that the animation could be shared across previous projects. All the tools were in place, and it just worked really well.
Like till this day, it's the best pipeline I've ever experienced.
Good man.
It is.
Yeah, it is. We've come a long way since then, though.
Yeah. And this is
Anyway,
why I use the Red9 tools.
yeah. So I mean, I got out of Eurocom 2 months before Eurocom went bust, and joined Crytek as animation technical director. And really, that was the biggest kickstart for Red9, because the contract I did with Crytek was that I could develop Red9 internally as an internal out resource, but I could develop it as an open source project and commit live to GitHub from Crytek. So it was awesome. I mean, they didn't care because they were a tech company. And as far as they were concerned, this is cool tech. It gets press. Crytek are awesome, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the studio pack realistically came from Crytek. Most of the really, the big tools and the hard work came through that way. And then obviously we went on to develop facial stuff for Crytek, and that was all bespoke for the company. Um, they didn't go bust, but there was all sorts of issues we all know
I
about.
remember.
We won't go through it because
Sad times,
but
sad times.
they,
But we had
they didn't do
fun.
they didn't do anybody any favors.
Yeah.
And basically we all walked out, and I came back on the basis that, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself. And so did Franco, the other partner in Red9. He was at Crytek Frankfurt. They were going through the same thing, and we both said, look, let's just do it. We've been talking about it for years. Let's just do it. And we did. And we've been doing it ever since. 4.5 years now. 4.5 years. And just solid coding, solid tool support, solid rigs. The rig, we started out with what effectively was very similar to the Eurocom rig, and we rewrote the entire lot, built it into nice Python modules. We still do it as a service, although we are talking about releasing it in part of the ProPack. So ProPack will eventually get the Puppet rig as a build system, and that's for quadrupeds as well. But at the moment, it's a service. Obviously, ProPack is a licensed software, but it's still very much based on StudioPack. So StudioPack is the core of everything, all the core APIs in StudioPack, and then all of the really nice bits go into ProPack, but StudioPack is still very much supported and used.
That's perfect. And like you actually released the Studio Pack first.
Yes.
And it was free for a while, and there was nothing else. It was just free for people to actually use.
Still is.
And it still is.
It's open source. It's still on GitHub. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's there. It's on the Exchange site, although that build needs rebuilding because it needs support 2019, and it's about a year old. The code on there. So we're trying to get the 2019 build working as best we can. There's a few caveats that 19 brings in with the caching, so we've got to fix those. But yeah, that'll be out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
And the free Studio Pack people can get now for free, and you still support it. And do you actually kind of have plans to kind of, as you said right now, to get the Pro Pack available for everyone instead of actually being like studios only?
It is. It's we do a freelance pack and we do a studio pack, and we do we do two different licenses. We do a node lot and a float license. We also do a freelance license. So if there's freelancers out there, it's slightly different because the license then doesn't expand. The studio license expands and it's on the float system. And we also have a node lot license for the film guys who obviously are sat behind firewalls and can't get out to the internet. So there's three.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how many are you at Red9 right now?
There's two key guys. There's myself and Franco, who do 90% of the code, and then we have a team of outsourcers that we pick and choose dependent on projects. We've got an accountant and a marketing salesperson, but that's it. We're a small studio, and the thing about that is that because we keep the code small, we know each other's code intimately, and we can fix bugs. And it grows nicely rather than get too big.
Which is great, because I think the wrong idea that people have sometimes is that because you have a free tool, that maybe the developer is getting enough support or perhaps enough to actually kind of just keep on doing the work. But the reality is very different, because maybe they think that you have like a big team behind you or something like that, but the reality is very different.
No, it is. Yeah, I mean, we're a small team. We do primarily games, but we're also doing bits of VFX, digital humans, that kind of thing. And it's kind of split between coding support for ProPack, which obviously studios are using to export to do all the nice animation things that ProPack does. So half of it, some of it is the support for that. Some of it is building rigs, doing the skinning, and effectively, a company coming up and saying, we need this character rigging. Can you skin it? Can you, build a skeleton, etc. So that's the service we do. And then the one that takes most of the time is facial. So we do facial everything from low-res VR projects up to full digital doubles from scans. And TalkBack, of course, which is another service that we started doing, which is the lip syncing setup. So yeah, that's taking audio and basically providing articulation for whatever rig.
You call that TalkBack? That's an epic name.
Yeah, I don't know know where it came from, to be honest. We just,
It's amazing.
yeah.
Good.
So yeah, I mean that's another one that we started doing, and that's nice. It helps the facial rigs because we can pump their data through really quickly and get articulation very
Right.
nicely.
And here's a good question. The source of the name Red9. I know why it's red, and only people from Eurocom would know why it's red. But can you please explain?
God, yes. So it goes back to the early days of coding when I was doing code, and it used to be just myself doing the stuff for Athens, and they were all called Ginger tools because back then, believe it or not, I used to have red hair before it got thin and turned grey. So I can't remember who did it. It might have been John Main. I can't remember who it was. One of the animators there had a picture of me, and I had a goatee beard at the time, and they dyed it bright red and bright red hair, and the icon to boot Ginger Tools was a picture of me going with a stupid smile on my face and bright red hair. And it was kind of when I started doing Red9, it was a little bit under the hood, and I couldn't really be associated with it. And red just it's like can't be Ginger, so it'd be red, hence red. I don't know where the 9 came from. It was just kind of seemed to work quite nicely with it. It's happened. And the Space Rocket logo came from a book that my son was reading at the time. I went, that's really nice. That fits quite nicely.
That is amazing.
Oh,
Yeah, because I remember back in Eurocom there was a lot of ginger buttons everywhere.
There was, yeah, Ginger
Yeah,
Export,
exactly.
Ginger. Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
awesome.
So that's what.
Really, really cool. So I always found that super funny because yeah, I think people kind of just see Mark Jackson and then see Red9. It's like, what is the connotation, like the correlation comes from? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why.
So yeah, we already talked about how many people, the Pro package that is available for people. If people actually want to, after this video, if people actually want to join in the Pro package in order to help you out, can they, and how can they actually go about to contact you and
Just excuse me. Yeah, just contact us. There's a contact form on the website. The Pro Pack is at the moment it's something we carefully manage for clients because there's some extra stuff that we tend to do based on who you are and the systems you need. So, for example, there's full Perforce integration, and there is a lot of health tests that we do when you boot Mayor and when you boot projects, and that's very specific to your working environment. So at the moment, rather than having a bill that's just sat there and people can download, it's a case of we try to tailor what we send over to make sure that you understand what it is. That makes sense. But yeah, just
contact. And when it comes to like the free tools, if they actually want to suggest anything to you guys, can they do the same?
Oh God, yeah. I mean the Studio Pack does still. I mean, it's stagnating a little bit. If you look at the UI, it still looks kind of the same, but actually under the hood, it's making massive progress because Studio Pack is the core of Pro Pack. So most of the changes that go in are stability, functionality going in to support some of the features that Pro Pack uses, but it's easier to put it into the core API. And also at some point in the near future, it's going to happen fairly soon. We're going to rewrite all the UIs and switch them all over to Qt because Mayor CMDS is just too much like our works right now. So we'll have a big update at some point in the near future. But yeah, if people have got suggestions, by all means, fire them away.
And on this video, I'm actually covering mostly just like the basic tools. I'm actually going a little bit into animation redirector and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff, I have to mention just quickly, is the stuff of wizards. I don't know how it works. I just know that it's magical. And I feel like I don't want to know how it works because it's incredible. And it doesn't slow down my mind either. I don't have a fast computer, and it's incredible.
Redirect is one of those things that I always wanted to do, and actually, it actually came up as a request from Cloud Imperium. Basically, they had a sequence for one of the videos, one of the around the verse videos that they do. And there was 2 people that were meant to be walking down a long corridor having a general conversation. And of course, the mocap studio hadn't got that volume, so they walked them around in a circle. And the request was, how the hell do we straighten that out in a way that we not spend weeks doing it? and the direct is kind of where that came from. And it's been developed a lot. Recently, we've had a lot more work and a lot more clients doing hand key stuff. And all of a sudden, we're now having things like Smart Bake to preserve key times going into all of the tools, and just try and work a little bit more cleverly in that way. But yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
amazing.
cool.
It's really, really cool. And that's something that I actually miss from working with you, like how interactive you are. You're always the kind of technical animator that whenever there's a problem with a tool or we had a good idea, we'll bounce by you and be like, Mark, have you thought about this? Or why is this not working? And then I could see in your eyes going like, ding, I have it. Okay, give me a day
Well,
and I'll sort it
the thing
out.
is, we have such a big API now, that a lot of requests come in that actually people go, that sounds really hard, and it's like, actually we've got most of it. It's just a case of adding a new flag and doing some extra bits. Obviously things like the redirector aren't. That's a massive pain in the backside, but the latest well, the latest one on that is to try and make it work with quads, and actually have it bend and bank round as you walk. Well, yeah. So bending the spine and flexing the spine as you walk in and redirecting a quadruped round. That's the latest request, and yeah, I'm putting that
Makes a
one
lot
off
of
because
sense,
it's
actually.
hard
It
work.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's hopefully for a firm client. They're
that's
wanting that.
amazing. So, as a last question, since I'm actually covering just the basics this time, would you be able to join us again for another video to just explain a little bit more about ProPack and exactly what each tool does? And coming from the mind of the creator, I think people will understand him so much
Yeah,
better.
yeah, yeah. By
Yeah,
all means. Yeah, no
sweet.
worries.
So,
As long as you've got quite a long video, because I can go.
no, but
Pro Pack,
it's always interesting.
it, it, it is, but I think one of the things with Pro Pack is it's on the surface it doesn't go as deep as you think it is, but there are so many back systems that are running in there to make things, communicate with each other. Uh, and I think that's really the bit that we're trying to do. It's like the animation format we have that talks to the exporters. The facial system that then generates an image plane, writes image plane into the animation format, and restores it when you do it. And then loading things against timecode. So you're doing a big performance shoot, and you can just drop the facial in based on the timecode on another character to sync things up. There's huge amounts of stuff
Yeah, no,
going on.
I can fully like the way I imagine in my head. I remember in Eurocom, every time I used to go to you about like, Mark, why don't we have a button for this? And then you would come to my desk and you look at me like, I don't know, I didn't know what I was talking about. And be like, if you try to clicking here and here, and this does this, and this is exactly what I wanted to do. So you already had created a tool for that. And most of the times, the
Mm.
animators would come to you with requests, and you already had a tool for that. So this is how I see the Red9 tool set. It's basically like you're putting all that stuff in a minimalistic way. People don't really see what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the suggestions we've have is the main animation toolkit, which is the big UI that we have in Studio Pack. Is there are so much functionality in there is to try and push some of those into smaller UIs and smaller button clicks so that it's not the big, massive, daunting kit of parts. It's like, I want to just snap two objects. Right, we have a separate UI for that, and that's maybe where we'll go when we start doing the QT builds of this
It
sort of
sounds
stuff.
it sounds really clever that way. It sounds really, really cool. Please sign me up for that. And yeah, I think we covered it all. I think that's all we have for the time being because I was supposed to actually make it short and just kind of give you an introduction and to show the creator. You are always been a person that I always admired in the industry. I think you are an evil genius, and it's incredible how much knowledge you have.
Just I've just been around a long time.
It's
I think that's what it is. I've been around
Yeah,
a long
like
time.
your tools, like they're faster than Autodesk's. I don't know exactly how you make things bake faster and like track faster. It's incredible. I still don't get it.
I couldn't possibly comment.
So yeah, no, thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate it, and I guess I'll see you next time.
All right.
Talk to
Talk
you
to you
soon,
soon.
Mark. Bye bye.
See you, man.